The Rojas tragedy, the blood secret in the ancient cellar. On the opening night of Rojas Castle, deep in the fog-covered Sierra Nevada mountains, a scream tore through the night. It echoed from the depths of the cellar, rising up the cold stone corridors like a sword slashing the air. The scream was so chilling that the crows perched on the bell tower startled and scattered, their shadows sweeping across the glowing windows like ink stains bleeding on an oil painting. Guests in the grand hall turned in shock. The flamenco guitar still played, but its strings suddenly screeched, distorted as if strangled. Seconds later, no second scream followed. Only a suffocating silence remained, as if the castle had swallowed someone's soul. A group of servants, pale-faced, rushed down to the cellar to check. The spiral staircase led into pitch darkness, cold, covered in moss and the smell of damp earth. The flickering oil lamp lit the old stone walls, revealing winding cracks like giant veins of the fortress. The deeper they went, the thicker the stench of death, sickly sweet, metallic, mixed with rotting wood and mold. They stopped before a thick, cracked wooden door, locked from the inside. Knocks echoed hollowly. No reply. When the door finally gave way, a blast of cold air struck their faces, carrying a stench so foul it nearly made them vomit. Light spilled in, revealing a sight that froze them all in the damp cellar. Inside a wooden chest, thick with cobwebs and dust, lay the corpse of a middle-aged man. His skin was waxy pale, lips purple, eyes bulging in despair. His limbs were bound tight with blood-stained rope hard and dry, his neck and chest riddled with gashes. His hair was matted, strands stuck in clotted blood like black ink smeared on cold stone. The body lay curled, motionless, like a ghost imprisoned for days, waiting to erupt into a deadly curse. The stench of the corpse rose violently, choking their throats, making every breath heavy. A maid screamed, the sound echoing, then swallowed by the stone vault. Another collapsed, trembling, pointing at the shiny silver ring still on the corpse's swollen purple finger, engraved with the name Santiago Morales. The name once spoken, the whole castle seemed to freeze. Santiago, the loyal steward of the Rojas family for 20 years. The man once seen as the pillar of the estate now lay here, reduced to lifeless flesh, while upstairs red wine still shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Downstairs, a true chalice of blood lay exposed, cold, congealed. Two opposite worlds, light and darkness, torn apart by a single scream. A young officer, hands shaking so much his flashlight flickered wildly, looked around and whispered, "My God, who could have done this?" But the room gave no answer. Only the wind whistled through the cracks, like the whisper of lost souls. The truth has been imprisoned for too long. Above, the flamenco music stopped abruptly. The laughter of the elite fell silent. Every anxious glance, every footstep echoing on the marble floor, every quickened breath spread through the hall. In a single moment, Rojas Castle turned from a symbol of power into the stage of a brutal crime. And when the police arrived, the name Inspector Isabel Fernández rang out. The woman, with eyes sharp as razor blades, stepped through the castle gates, her long coat billowing in the cold mountain wind. She said nothing, only stared into the cellar's darkness, as if she had already heard the echoes from the body just found. An ancient curse had just awakened, and Isabel knew. Tonight was only the beginning. Rojas Castle, perched precariously on the Sierra Nevada slopes, looked like a giant beast slumbering in the fog. Its meter-thick stone walls were mottled with green moss, crossed by long, jagged cracks like war scars carved deep into flesh. By day, Even sunlight through clouds could not brighten it. By night, the dim oil lamps only deepened its ancient deathly aura. The opening night, meant to mark the castle's rebirth after years of abandonment, had become a collective nightmare. Noble guests, who once toasted merrily in the gilded hall, now huddled in the dark, eyes fixed on the cellar door as if hypnotized. Whispers spread like little snakes, slithering through every corner. Who killed Santiago? Why tonight? Amid the chaos, Inspector Isabel Fernández appeared. She entered the castle with a firm stride, her thick ash-grey coat swaying in the wind, her shoes striking strong rhythms on the cold marble. Isabel was 42, slender but resilient. Her brown hair tied back revealed a sharp face, her grey eyes cold, always fixed on the truth no one could hide. In Spanish law enforcement, Isabel was known for her ability to hear what others hide. Colleagues said she read a crime scene like sheet music. Every bloodstain, every scratch, every trembling witness's glance was a note. And when Isabel pieced them together, the symphony of truth rose raw and merciless. She investigated not only with logic but with sharp intuition. Many cases once thought dead-ends Isabel had brought into the light, but the price of such sharpness was solitude. People respected her, but also feared her, like fearing a mirror that reflects every lie. Before Isabel, the Rojas family gathered in a small cluster. Yellow light shone on elegant suits and glittering gowns, but every face was shadowed with unease. The most prominent and, also the most dangerous, was Diego Rojas, head of the family, 58 years old. He sat in a red velvet armchair, back straight, eyes narrowed like an old fox. Diego had once been the symbol of power and wealth, holding countless properties and massive projects across Spain. But tonight, his gaze no longer carried confidence, instead cloaked in a cold defense, as if every question from Isabel were a knife pointed at his chest. Beside Diego was Lucia Rojas, his sister, a widow in her 50s, slender, with a pale face. Lucia was known for her quiet nature, always staying in the background of the family. Tonight her eyes kept darting toward Diego, as if waiting for him to dictate every answer. Further away was Alejandro Rojas, Diego's eldest son, just past 30. But his face bore the arrogance of someone raised in luxury. Alejandro crossed his arms, his dark eyes flashing with discontent whenever Isabel's gaze passed over him. He was notorious for partying, rumored debts, and shady connections, but nothing had ever gone public because the Rojas name shielded it all. In contrast was Maria Rojas, the youngest daughter, about 25, her bright eyes glistening with tears not yet dry. She trembled, hands clutching her dress, eyes constantly avoiding contact. Maria had been seen as the jewel of the family, excelling in studies, rarely appearing in scandals. But tonight, her excessive nervousness made Isabel note to herself, one who hides something never knows how to hide the eyes. The atmosphere in the castle was so heavy that even the fireplace crackled like whispers. Isabel quietly observed each person, sensing clearly this was not just a murder. This was a play where everyone wore a mask. And the first mask had fallen with Santiago Morales' corpse. In the cellar's darkness, Isabel imagined hearing a sound, the clanging of iron chains against stone, long and heavy. She knew the secrets of Rojas Castle were not only in that corpse, they also hid behind every glance, every breath, every half smile of this family. And her task was not only to find the killer, it was to tear apart the crimson velvet curtain where darkness had dwelt for decades. The cellar of Rojas Castle lit up under the temporary floodlights set up by forensics. On the cold stone floor, The wooden chest where Santiago Morales was found still lay wide open, like a black mouth that had swallowed and vomited a deadly secret. The air was thick with dried blood, old rot, and the millennial damp of stone walls, making everyone who entered shiver. Inspector Isabel stood motionless for a long time, her eyes sweeping slowly from the corpse to the ropes to the smeared blood like a grotesque painting. Her finger brushed the frayed hemp rope, its edge stuck with strands of grey hair Santiago's own, but faint fingerprints still lingered on the rope. This was not the work of a stranger, Isabel whispered, almost only to herself. This was a hand from within the house. Forensics reported, Santiago died about 3 weeks ago, cause of death being severe trauma combined with blood loss. His body bore many bruises, broken rib signs of torture before death. Strangely, there were no signs the body had been moved after death, meaning he was locked up and died right here in this cellar, just meters below where the Rojas family kept drinking and dancing. Another discovery heightened the tension. In Santiago's coat pocket, they found a small black USB drive. Inside were multiple document files, encrypted passwords, and several fragmented recordings. Santiago's trembling voice, mixed with heavy breaths, "I can't keep this secret any longer." Diego transferred money into a hidden account. They're trafficking fake documents. If I disappear, search the castle. The recording cut off suddenly, as if he had been interrupted. Isabel clenched the USB in her hand, knowing this could be the key to exposing the entire Rojas family. She began interrogating each member. Alejandro Rojas, the eldest son, was the first. He leaned back in his chair, sneering, his tone defiant. "A manager is dead. So what? You police think my family will collapse just because of that?" Isabel tilted her head, her eyes cutting into his face like blades. "You know he died in the cellar, right beneath the room where you were dancing with women during the party. You didn't hear anything." Alejandro blinked, briefly unsettled, but quickly smirked. "I drank until I passed out, Inspector. If you need witnesses, dozens can confirm it." A perfect answer, but Isabel knew. The more perfect it sounded, the more it smelled of concealment. Then it was Lucia's turn, Diego's sister. She trembled at the sight of the crime scene photos. Her thin hand clenched her handkerchief, her voice breaking. "Santiago. He was once loyal to this family. Why? Why did he have to die like that?" Isabel observed closely. Lucia's eyes were wet with tears, but her lips pressed tightly as if swallowing a secret. Real grief or an act? Maria, the youngest daughter, was different. When questioned, she avoided eye contact, her shoulders hunched like a sparrow caught in a storm. Isabel softened, asking gently, "You were the last one to see Santiago before he disappeared, weren't you?" Maria bit her lip and nodded. "He told me to be careful, that there are things I shouldn't believe, even from my father." The room went silent. Isabel felt her blood run cold. Santiago had tried to leave a warning for Diego's own daughter. Finally, Isabel faced Diego Rojas. He sat upright, his deep eyes like black holes swallowing all light. "Mr. Diego," Isabel said evenly, "your fingerprints were found on the rope that bound Santiago. How do you explain that?" Diego didn't blink. "I once helped him clean the storage. What's so strange about that?" Isabel placed another piece of evidence on the table. Blood matching Diego's DNA found on the victim's clothing. This time, the corner of his mouth twitched, but his gaze remained icy. "If you want to frame me as the killer, go ahead. But remember, this castle has more ghosts than you think." The half-truth, half-threat reply left the entire room frozen in silence. Isabel stepped out into the cold stone hallway, her breath misting in the damp air. In her mind, the fragments surfaced. Santiago's recording, Maria's trembling eyes, Alejandro's unusual confidence, and Diego's chilling composure. They all had motives. They all had opportunities. But in this labyrinth of power, who was the true killer? Isabel raised her eyes to the portrait of the Rojas ancestor hanging on the wall, the painted eyes seeming to follow her every move. A thought flared in her mind. The truth was not only in the corpse, it lived in every stone of this castle, and she knew the play had only just begun. A sudden storm swept in, wind howling through the dusty window cracks, making Rojas Castle tremble like a wounded old beast. Oil lamps flickered in the hallway, casting long, twisted shadows like phantoms clinging to Isabel as she descended back to the cellar. She needed to look again, an urge in her heart compelled her back. Santiago had left something unsaid. The flashlight swept across the cellar, its beam brushing dried bloodstains. Then it stopped at a strange patch of wall stone, slightly shifted. Isabel tapped, hollow sound. With her knife, she pried it loose, revealing a narrow gap. Inside, a small black leather-bound notebook. The first page, letters, shaky but clear. If I die, my killer will not be Diego. He is only a puppet. The truth lies with the one no one expects. Isabel felt her blood freeze. The entire investigative team believed Diego was the killer, but Santiago, the victim, had left a message denying it. She turned the page. Entries detailed secret funds, signatures, forged seals. But the name was not Diego's, it was Alejandro, the eldest son. Isabel closed the notebook, her heart pounding. A cold draft whistled through the gap, like the bitter laughter of darkness. The next morning, Diego's interrogation continued. Isabel placed the leather notebook on the table. Diego's eyes flickered not with fear, but with a strange release. "You know this, don't you?" Isabel asked, her voice sharp as steel. Diego smirked, a smile mixed with bitterness and defiance. "At last, you found it. I killed Santiago. Yes, but not because he dared oppose me. I killed him because he knew the truth about my son." The air thickened, as if frozen solid. "Alejandro," Isabel exclaimed. Diego nodded slowly. "He runs everything. I'm just the mask. The dealings, the hidden accounts, even the intimidation of witnesses. All from his hand." Santiago wanted to bring the evidence to light, but he knew and ordered me to silence him. Diego burst out laughing, a hoarse laugh dragged up from the depths of hell. "You think I am the most powerful one in this castle? No, I am only an old fox guarding the door. The real monster has grown inside this house long ago." Isabel was shaken. A truth overturned. Diego did not deny killing Santiago, but admitted he was only a tool. Alejandro, his son, was the one behind the web of crimes. Just as Isabel was about to summon Alejandro, another revelation made everything explode. Forensics sent a supplemental report on Santiago's coat. Besides Diego's blood, there was DNA from a third person. A quick comparison with the family records, none other than Maria, the youngest daughter, a thunderbolt. Isabel immediately summoned Maria Letters in the interrogation room. The girl trembled violently, her eyes red and swollen. I didn't kill Mr. Santiago. I only helped my father hide some papers. He begged me. He said if I didn't, Alejandro would kill the whole family." Maria's voice broke, each word like a knife slicing into the silence. "Do you know what your brother has done?" Isabel asked. Maria nodded, then shook her head. a hot tear falling onto the cold steel table. I only overheard about shipments, about people who disappeared. Mr. Santiago told me to leave the castle, but I couldn't. I fear Alejandro more than I fear father. The air in the room sank into something eerily nameless, a mixture of fear, guilt, and secrets. That night, Isabel sat alone in the vast drawing room. Outside, Rojas Castle was swallowed in fog, its sharp stone towers like claws scratching at the night sky. She closed her eyes, the fragments spinning in her mind. Diego admitted killing Santiago, but only under orders. The notebook accused Alejandro as the true operator. Maria's DNA lingered on the victim's coat. Not just one suspect, but the entire family was a network. And Santiago, loyal for 20 years, had died for daring to touch the monster raised from the very blood of the Rojas. Isabel opened her eyes and whispered, "This is not a murder. This is a purge." Heavy night rain lashed against the stained old windows, creating a damp melody that made Rojas Castle seem to groan. Isabel walked along the stone corridor, her heart weighed down. Each step echoed back as a pounding sound, like the heartbeat of a colossal secret being forced into the light. She clutched Santiago's black leather notebook, rereading each page under the yellow desk lamp. Numbers, connecting arrows, funds flowing through anonymous accounts, then vanishing into tax havens. All pointed to one thing. Rojas Castle was not just a place of glittering display, but the command center of an international network of money laundering and illicit transport. Certain names appeared again and again. Politicians, retired generals, even businesses thought to be clean. And among all those names, Santiago left a small symbol on unsteady A with the note, "The Puppet Master." Isabel closed her eyes, picturing Santiago writing these lines in utter terror, knowing that once revealed, his life would be traded for death. In the morning, she summoned Armand, a former colleague of Santiago, the castle's wine cellar keeper. The salt-and pepper-haired man trembled under Isabel's gaze. "He, Santiago, once trusted me," Armand whispered. "He said, if anything happened, I should tell someone brave enough to listen. This castle, beneath the second cellar, there is a secret room. It isn't on the plans." Armand handed Isabel a rusty key. His hands shook, but his voice hardened. "Santiago once told me, one day, justice will need this place." Isabel and her team forced the lock. The metal door hidden behind the wine rack swung open, a stench of mold mixed with chemicals rushing out. Inside, flashlight beams revealed dozens of stacked wooden crates. Not wine, not antiques, but documents, papers, invoices, forged certificates, and suitcases stuffed with cash. In the middle of the room, a large map lay spread across a wooden table. Transport routes from Granada, Seville, all the way to Marseille and Antwerp. Red arrows crisscrossed. In the corner of the map, a circled symbol, R. Rojas. The whole team stood in silence. Isabel whispered, "This is the heart of the monster." But even more unexpectedly, in a steel cabinet, Isabel found a set of recordings. A hoarse voice crackled out as the tape player ran. "Diego, you don't understand. We're not the ones in control. We are only a link in the chain. This castle has long belonged to others. If I die, don't think you alone are guilty." Santiago's voice, laced with panic. Isabel listened, her heart pounding. This statement cast doubt over everything. If Diego was not in control, if Alejandro was only a tool, then who were those others? She presented this discovery to her superiors, but the response chilled her blood. The chief inspector listened halfway, then dismissed it. "Enough, Isabel," Diego confessed. The case is closed. But sir, Isabel protested, her voice taut as a string, there's still Alejandro, the network, and I said closed means closed. You don't understand the consequences. His eyes darkened, not with fear of justice, but with fear of something larger, deeper. Isabel left the room, her heart ablaze. This was no longer a normal case. This was a battle where even justice itself was being restrained. That night, she stood in the castle courtyard, the Sierra Nevada wind whipping her face raw. Above, the stone towers rose like bony fingers pointing at the night sky, forever concealing the blood soaked into the walls for centuries. She realized Santiago was not merely a loyal manager killed for betrayal. He had been the keeper of secrets, the one who tried to drag light into a place where darkness had never been banished. And his death was no accident, it was a warning. Isabel clenched her fist. In her mind echoed Santiago's last words, the puppet master, and she knew the curtain had only just lifted. Behind it, the darkness remained intact. A week later, the Sierra Nevada sky collapsed with cold rain, thunder tearing across the sheer cliffs. Isabel Fernández returned to Rojas Castle in an unusual silence. Newspapers screamed, Diego Rojas confesses to crimes, justice prevails. People read, shook their heads, and moved on. But Isabel knew nothing was over. In her hand was the tape Santiago had left, the words that never stopped pounding in her mind. We're not the ones in control. We are only a link in the chain. The second cellar, where crates and smuggling maps had been stored, was now sealed. But Isabel still had the key. She entered alone, the dense cold like invisible flesh tightening around her throat. She sat before the map, studying every red arrow closely. One detail she had missed. All the routes converged at a single point, Madrid. And in a desk drawer, she found an unopened envelope. Inside, a blurred black and white photo of 3 men standing before the castle gates. 1978. One was a young Diego, the second Santiago, but the third made Isabel's blood run cold, her father, retired General Manuel Fernández. The photo was yellowed, but unmistakable. Isabel felt the whole world tilt. Her father, the symbol of integrity, once stood beside the 2 men now exposed in a criminal network. Her heart pounded, aching like hammer blows. Santiago's words suddenly became clear. We are only a link in the chain. Then the puppet master could be the previous generation, the hands that had planted the seed for the darkness, still alive today. She went to her mother and asked about the photo. The old woman sat in the dim light, her eyes clouded by age, trembling as she answered, Your father was not a bad man. He once investigated the powerful, but one day he came back, his face pale as ash. He said, We will never escape this castle. Isabel shuddered. Her father had once touched the darkness, but instead of destroying it, he remained silent, letting it slither across generations. That night, Isabel drove to Madrid, tracing a bank account Santiago had noted in his notebook. The account holder, Alejandro Rojas. But the file did not show Alejandro alone. Among the corners appeared a name that left Isabel frozen. Manuel Fernández, her father. A chill lashed through her heart. The pieces fell into place. Diego was only the facade, Santiago the keeper of secrets, while Alejandro and her father were the ones pulling the strings of the entire network. A call rang out. A hoarse voice, strange yet familiar. Isabel, you shouldn't dig deeper. Some truths will only make you lose everything. She gripped the steering wheel, tears rising uncontrollably. Father, are you the puppet master? silence on the other end, then a sigh, heavy as a century. I once wanted to tear it down, but they are more than you think. I stayed silent to protect the family. Now you must choose, bury the truth, or let it bury you with it. The call cut off abruptly. Isabel sat in stunned silence. Outside, Madrid drowned in neon lights blurred by the rain. Diego's confession was only one piece. In truth, he had been forced to bear the blame, to hide a network as deep as eucalyptus roots driven into the soil of Spain. The twist was not only that the true culprit had yet to be exposed, but that betrayal flowed in Isabel's own blood. The father she had worshipped was the largest link in the chain. When she returned to the castle, she looked up at the stone walls, the dark windows like hollow eye sockets. She understood every confession, every trial was only powder on the face of power. The true darkness had never vanished. It sat enthroned in the lavish offices of Madrid, in the hands that once held hers as a child. Isabel stood motionless, the wind whipping through her cloak, her hair lashing her face like a whip. Inside her, a voice rang out. You cannot stop. The twist of fate was complete. Diego was not the mastermind. Santiago was not only a victim, and Isabel was no longer the detached investigator. She had been pulled straight into the vortex where justice had to confront her own blood. The darkness of Rojas Castle, it turned out, did not dwell only within its stone walls. It had spread into every vein, every generation, every family. And Isabel was now both witness and the one chosen by fate to either end or continue this devil's game. The verdict for Diego Rojas was delivered on a bleak winter afternoon. The vast courtroom echoed with the cold strike of the gavel. Death sentence. The words rang against the stone walls like the final blow, severing the life of a nobleman stained by blood and lies. The crowd outside the courthouse cheered in glee. On the front pages, bold headlines praised Spanish justice. But Isabel sat in silence, staring at Diego's wrinkled, trembling face as he was led away. In his eyes, there was no more fox-like confidence, only resignation and a mocking glint, as if he knew that he was merely a pawn, sacrificed to shield a far greater board. A few days later, Rojas Castle was sealed by the authorities. Crimson seals stretched across the wooden doors, but they could not conceal the darkness still flooding the place. Villagers at the mountains foot-watched, whispering prayers. To them, Rojas Castle was nothing less than a massive tomb, where generations had buried secrets in stone and blood. Isabel returned alone to the castle one last time before it was handed over to the state. She walked through the icy corridor, the ancestral portraits staring down, their eyes hazy in the fading afternoon light. Every stone, every moss stain, every crack seemed to whisper to her, the truth is not over. The cellar where Santiago had died was now empty, holding only the stench of dampness and the hardened bloodstains on the stone floor. Isabel stood there, her hand resting lightly on the cold wall, as a hidden storm rose within her. Was justice truly served, or just a performance? Diego was dead yet. Alejandra remained free. Her father stayed silent. And how many others in this network were still drinking wine under crystal chandeliers, laughing over the pain of crushed souls? Isabel returned to Madrid, stepping into her father's old apartment. Inside, dust covered everything, lifeless. On the oak table lay a sealed envelope addressed to her. She opened it, her hands trembling. The handwriting shook, the ink smeared as if written in a long night of despair. My daughter, Isabel, I knew you would find the truth. I was wrong to choose silence. Darkness never disappears. It only changes coats, changes names, Diego, Santiago, May, Alejandro, all were just pawns. But if even one person dares to stand, perhaps there will be hope. Forgive me or forget me, Manuel Fernández. The paper slipped from Isabel's hands, her heart pounding. In each word, she saw not justification, but a last testament and surrender. Her father had chosen to step back, leaving her this burden. That night, Isabel sat in her small office, the yellow lamp shining on the thick case file. She wrote the final report on the Santiago Morales case. Each sentence weighed like a knife on her heart. Finally, she wrote, "The Diego Rojas case closed with a death sentence." But Rojas Castle was not merely the scene of a personal crime, was the evidence of a dark network of power spanning generations. Diego is dead, but the secret lives, and only the truth can kill it. She set the pen down and sighed. Outside the window, Madrid glowed bright at night, but that light could not chase away the darkness threading through every corner of power. The day Diego was executed, the Sierra Nevada lay under a fresh layer of white snow. Isabel did not go to the prison. She stood at the mountain's foot, gazing up at Rojas Castle, looming like a scar against the sky. The blizzard lashed her face, the wind howled through the cliffs, sounding like the cries of Santiago and countless souls still unfreed. She murmured, her voice lost in the wind, "I will not stay silent." It was not only a promise to Santiago, but a vow to her father and to all those who had died in the dark. The story ended not with dazzling light, but with a faint ray piercing the dark clouds. Justice had been carried out with Diego, but the greater truth remained hidden. Isabel understood. Her journey had only just begun, and the message she left etched, as deep as a knife in stone, as blood soaked into the castle walls. Justice is not a sentence on paper. Justice lives only when we dare to face the darkness and do not turn away. Silence is complicity.